Good morning, everyone. This is the last video on the AQA Language Paper 1, GCSE with AQA. Today we're going to be looking at the question 2, which I will then sort of go through and suggest ways of approaching. So let's go straight into it. And then again, the tips and the advice and the way you manage time and you manage structure. So question 2 in my strategy will be the fourth question of the exam, not the second one if you're doing it the other way around. So it's all based on how to manage time and then structure your answers. In this one, you've got a set area of lines that you have to look at in the question. Look in the detail at this extract from lines 8 to 18 of the source. And on the paper, you are actually given this as mini extract on the actual question. So that's very helpful. So you're not having to move from one place to another. You can actually see the information in front of you there. So let's quickly go and look at the question and then look at the way we need to approach it. So again, we're looking at how much time we need to take on this. And again, we notice that this, like the structure question, is 8 marks. And a lot of students have more of a comfortable situation with language, because language has been something taught to children from a very early age, when it includes sort of techniques and things. So let's look at the question itself. So it's going back to the 8 marks. So it's 8 marks, and I would, as a student, I would immediately think I will only spend 10 minutes on this, and that's the first thing. So then we then look at the question, and it says, how does the writer use language here to describe the effects of the weather? Now, how does the writer use language here is just a very, again, bland statement. And then to describe, this part is always in the question. Again, as I've mentioned to you before, that all the questions in the AQA GCSE language papers are formatted in the same way. So we know this. So let's just look at that first. How does the writer use language here to describe? Language is given a definition here. Words and phrases. So you can pick out a word or a phrase that kind of gets you to answer the question, which we'll look at further. We've got language features and techniques as well. So, talking about the metaphors, the similes and all that sort of stuff, alliteration. I'm a bit concerned about this one, sentence forms, because when you start looking at the structure of a sentence, you're kind of stepping into the structure question. And this is the language question. So I really wouldn't go down this route. And I think the advice is to keep your focus on these two areas here. Now, when you're looking at a question, don't just look at how does the writer use language here to describe. Look at the key words. And this time it says the effects. That's really important. If we look at the text quickly, if you just said the wind came in gusts and you thought that was a highlight, well, that wouldn't be an effect of the weather. A gust is how the weather is behaving, but it's not showing an effect. The effect would be this, at times shaking the coach. So my first bit of advice is very quickly, when you get into this question, you need to go through and try to highlight all the areas that you think show the effects of the weather. So, you go through and highlight all these sort of things. And so on and so on. So you go through very quickly, and you go through chronologically again as you go through. There's so many effects that you can pick out, etc., etc. So when we start this question, make sure that you really do look at the effects of the weathers, and you are looking out for words and phrases, language features and techniques. As I say, I kind of feel that's a bit of a no-runner, because you're going to get confused in what you're expressing, and you want to express the language capabilities of the writer. And Daphne du Maurier's descriptions are superb, and there's lots of them to choose from. So let's have a look in the way we could actually structure an answer. Now, so I have mentioned throughout the videos that we must approach this chronologically. And it makes sense to always do a chronological approach, because as sources progress, we learn more and more, and we understand the context of the whole setting that has been put in this extract, and we understand what it's all about. So let me just show you what I would do at the beginning. I would aim to get, because there's 8 marks, I would try to do 4 paragraphs and try to get 2 marks each. So let me just show you a couple of things here on here. So this is something I just quickly put together. So let's say my first paragraph is this one, and look what the way I put it, and then I'll explain what I'm doing here, so that this is what you do with each paragraph. So at the beginning of the small extract, Daphne du Maurier personifies. So I immediately identify a reference, and I've actually named the reference. In this case, it is a literary device, and I wouldn't say, I would do it in a subliminal way again. At the beginning of the small extract, Daphne du Maurier personifies, and then I take the quote. And I don't always say Daphne du Maurier uses the personification, or the Daphne du Maurier uses the quote, which is a personification, and then name the quote. It doesn't flow well. So try to incorporate your style of writing into your answers. So at the beginning of the small extract, Daphne du Maurier personifies the whole body of the coach trembled and swayed. So that is the reference that I am picking on here. And it's very clear. The whole body of the coach trembled and swayed. But look, it doesn't stop there. It's not about just identifying the technique and thinking that's it, I've got a mark. Remember, we're trying to show the effects of the weather. So there's a key word that we always should look for keywords in the references, because it's the keywords in the references that create the impact. And the one that there are several words in this one. The whole body is, confirms the personification. So it doesn't talk about the whole carriage. It says the body. So that's a human sort of element. And then trembled. So I've decided to pick one of those as the example. So I put the word trembled gives us an impression of the weather being so bad that even the coach is terrified. Now that's enough. That's all you have to do. So what I've done there, I've used a technique. So let me just show you what the technique is by going into, so let me just show where we go with this now on the technique. So how to approach it. So number 1, identify the reference you want to use. Number 2, look at keywords that create the effect. And number 3, show the impact of the effect. And it's as simple as that. And then what I would recommend at that point is that you trying to create 3 more paragraphs underneath here. So let me just put that there. Let's go back to my notes that I've developed earlier and show you the connective paragraphs. So I would do 3 more paragraphs, again, structuring my answer. So like this, I would put them here. So if we put that all in context now, at the beginning of the small extract, as we go on, furthermore, and finally. So we're looking at the extract up here. So, you know, we might get a furthermore in here, or so as we go on, could be, well, we could start there. That could be as we go on. It could be furthermore, or it could be other words. Look, they're too broken by the wind. That's another one. Then the wheels of the coach, you know, there's loads in there. So you've got loads of references to choose from. But when you write them, don't just identify the technique and think that's going to give you a mark. It will if you identify it rightly. For goodness sake, don't say it's alliteration or a metaphor at that point when it's actually personification. So you've got to make sure you get your techniques right. But the examiner's more interested in how the writer has created the effect on it all the way. And altogether, this should only take you 10 minutes. So let's come out of that now and let's come back on here. So look, that's a quick one today. It's really about the way, again, you approach an 8-mark question. You've got to remember, in the context of the exam strategy I do, you will have already done 4 questions or 3 questions up to this point, and this is number 4. And so you've almost finished. And those short paragraphs should be spaced out very nicely and very clearly. So just again, identify the reference, show the key words of a reference, of how it works in a way, and then the impact of it against the question. So it says effects of the weather, don't just do the weather. And students have made mistakes by not reading the key words very well. Look, a lot of what I'm doing at the moment is helping. This is a free video about how to approach a question, and that I will continue doing this. But I would encourage you, when you've looked at this video, to, if you haven't done already, is to purchase the guides I've got online on my shop. And as I said, they're only £5, and you can basically go through the structuring of each question in those guides in your own time, and it will help you it's more like a workbook and a guide. And my guides are user friendly. They're not written so academically that you have to be a professor to understand them, and there's nothing wrong with those elements, but really you want something practical that you can practice and look at, and they do work like that. So I would welcome your feedback on these videos. If they're helpful, please tell me, and please spread the word. I will be looking at Facebook, another presentation video on Facebook over the next week, and I will do paper 2, language paper 2. But I will also finish off with paper 1 on the first week. Next week on Monday, I will do question 5, which is the essay question, where you have a picture or you have to write a creative writing story. And again, give lots of tips about that. Remember, question 5 is section B, and it's 50% of the exam mark in both paper 1 and paper 2.